Welcome to this third lesson on situation ethics, and this is looking at the four presumptions which Fletcher makes in order for his theory to work. So if we start with positivism, this is the one that is the most challenging to understand because the word positivism actually doesn't really tell us much about the idea. Initially, we might read positivism and think, oh, does that mean it's an optimistic theory or a happy theory? No. Positivism is simply Fletcher's way of saying that he is asserting belief in God. He is positively claiming it. And he's not going to make any rational argument for why belief in God is valid. And he's not going to make any argument for why love should be the goal of ethics, the telos of ethics. He's simply claiming that it's true. Now, we need to accept that. It's one of the presumptions after all. But later on, we might challenge that and say, okay, well, what has been assumed without evidence, we might want to reject without evidence. Fletcher is positively assuming faith in God and that love's the goal of ethics. He's not going to bother to try and prove these theories. Do we have to bother to reject them then? So that's something to bear in mind for when we evaluate situation ethics. But to start with, positivism is simply the belief that God is real and that love is the goal of ethics. The next theory, or the next presumption, is pragmatism. And this comes from an American philosophical theory, a school of thought, which is that what is good is what works. So situation ethics is not about creating a beautiful castle in the sky, a logically sound system that has no relation whatsoever to life as it's lived. Rather, it derives its power from the fact that it works. So it's not simplistic, it's not perfectionist, in Fletcher's words there. It works. And so this is an American philosophical theory which claims that in order to be sound, philosophically sound, it has to work in reality. So that's the second presumption, that situation ethics is pragmatic. It focuses on what is doable rather than what is perfect. Now, the next presumption is contextual relativism. Here Fletcher is saying that a situation ethicist never says words like never, or perfect, or always, or complete. Situation ethics believes that the correct answer is entirely dependent on the situation. So what's right is contextually relative. And Fletcher has a lovely phrase for this, which is going to require a bit of unpacking. And that phrase is, situation ethics relativizes the absolute. It does not absolutize the relative. So to explain what that means, situation ethics believes that there is only one absolute moral commandment, and that is to do the most loving thing. Now, there might be any number of moral suggestions that arise out of that one absolute, and these have the status of being relative truths. So if you see on the right hand side of your screen, it says giving to charity will often be a moral thing to do. That's only because it is often the most loving thing to do. So it's a relative truth. It's relative to that one absolute that you should do the most loving thing, and giving to charity is often the most loving thing to do with your money. But giving to charity does not in itself become an absolute moral commandment. Something like Catholic ethics could end up stating that thou must give 10% of what you earn to charity. And that becomes a new absolute rule that you have to do it, that you must do it. But for situation ethics, that's not true. There is only ever one absolute, and that everything else is relative to that. So it relativizes that absolute by applying it in a myriad of different situations. That's the relative application of that one absolute truth. What it doesn't do is say that secondary truths, like giving to charity, becomes an absolute commandment. Have a little bit of a think about that. It sounds more confusing than it actually is. And the final presumption is personalism. This is the view that people are the most important things in ethics, not rules, not the system. And Fletcher says that a legalist, or we would use the term deontologist, a legalist is a what asker. So they would say, what does the law say? Whereas a situationist is a who asker, who is to be helped. There's a longer quote here elaborating Fletcher's point of view. Now this quote is brilliant because it contains a number of very, very usable lines for your exam essays. The crucial thing to focus on is that situation ethics cares about people rather than rules. So, in summary, there are four presumptions of situation ethics: positivism, pragmatism, relativism, personalism. Positivism is the belief that God exists and that the one absolute truth in ethics, the telos, is to do the most loving thing. Everything else is secondary and derivative. Pragmatism is the belief that an ethical theory is only good insofar as it actually works. Relativism is the idea that you are allowed some freedom in applying that one absolute truth, that there are many ways of actually achieving doing the most loving thing. And finally, that the point of all your ethical actions must be about making people's lives better, not about satisfying the rules of the game or the rules of the ethical theory. Thanks for watching. Please can you make sure you watch the next video, which is about the 6 fundamental principles of situation ethics, which really is the heart of the situation ethics theory.